Hello and welcome along to the On the Whistle podcast. I'm your host, Zayn Nabbi. Today we're doing the second edition of our rugby strand. And boy, oh boy, are Courtney and I excited. We've got the legend that is Mama Rugby, content creator, journalist on East Coast Radio, the lady who is paving a way for the development of the game with women, girls, and new frontiers. Dawn Dunn, welcome to the pod. I know you're not from the farm like my friend. How are you doing?
How's it? Oh, wow. What a beautiful weekend. What a beautiful weekend. I have to tell you, it's been rock and roll. And I know we're going to talk about it. We're going to unpack it. But it's lekker to be chatting with you guys on a Sunday morning. And it's so lekker that we can sit on our couches and talk to each other from around the world. I think it's super cool. And I love technology for that.
Dawn, I just want to say welcome. I'm happy and sad. Yeah, two Durban people, one Pietermaritzburg person. Those relationships are not always great, but in this case, the relationships are very good. It's lovely to see your success, firstly.
Thank you.
For many years, but it's lovely to see your success. But also, just know that you are involved in a sport that we love talking about. This is our second edition, and we're so excited to have you here today.
Well, Dawn, no better place for us to start than obviously what's happened in Pretoria yesterday. The Springboks played. They had a 42-24 win at Loftus against an inexperienced Italian team. Rassie Erasums happy that his team scored 6 tries, but he admitted afterwards that he was left frustrated with the performance and hinted there might be a few selection changes ahead of the second test next weekend. Let's maybe start with the test yesterday. What were your impressions of it?
Firstly, you haven't lived till you've gone to a test at Loftus. Let me tell you, nobody does rugby like Loftus. You know, the most beautiful thing for me, before I unpack the game quickly for you, the most incredible, exciting thing about yesterday was the atmosphere and the Rainbow Nation. And I have to tell you, the audience has completely changed over the last couple of years, where we really have a snapshot of our various colors. We had vuvuzelas yesterday. They weren't very popular. So we had the whole Kaizer Chiefs hat with the vuvuzelas and the whole thing. People were dancing. We had all races dancing in the aisles at halftime or whenever there was a water break or an injury. People just danced the whole way through. A lot of people were hoing, they were dancing. It was absolutely electric. And, you can just feel that something special is going to happen. And I would say the Italian job, which is what we're calling it, the Italian job, was a game of 2 halves. We had a really brilliant first half, which was initially a little bit messy, a lot of drop balls. I think Italy were extremely physical, considering it was a young team. They literally are carrying 17 injuries. That is a whole team. But the young guys that they fielded stepped up and they brought it. And it was really lovely to see. There were some big hits. They made 120 tackles in the first half. And I think they weathered that Springbok storm very, very well. What I know Rassie is definitely not happy with, and none of the other journalists were either, and I'm sure you've already checked the news media online, is that second half performance, the minute at 48 minutes or so when the bomb squad came on. And, at Loftus, when the bomb squad comes on, it's a gedunta. The music goes and you get the fireworks and the whole thing, and you get these big tree trunks running onto the field. Oh, my gosh. So these oaks look like they can stop a bus. They all run on together, and you feel the earth tremble. And it was a limp squid. It was, oh, my gosh. I think if you look at, if you put the 40 plus aside and you look at the dominance in the second half, the Italians definitely, Azzurri definitely got the better end. And I would say for them, they're going to take that second half and they're going to take the tweaks that they made there, and they're definitely going to build on it before the next test.
I would say, listen, I think you've summarized it perfectly. I can't disagree with anything you've said there, because a game of two halves. But for me, I'd like to just start off with Holly Davidson, firstly.
Yes.
Female ref.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
watching the game in a pub, and not once was there a comment about the fact that there was a female. I think I only noticed her in the second half.
When Monet ran her over.
Yeah, sorry, that's when I noticed her. So let's just firstly give credit to Holly Davidson for managing that game very well. Coming to the game and the fixture, I love the term the Italian job. I thought the Italians are giving us exactly what we want in terms of our preparation for games coming ahead.
Yes.
I love the fact that you said this was a bit of a damn squid. The players need this type of intensity. They will be better next week as a result of it.
For me, we started like this in the first half, and typically when the bomb squad comes on, there is generally a massive impact on the game. You literally can feel it. It's a boom, and you feel the momentum swing, and you feel the energy. Keeping in mind they're playing at altitude. Italy are not used to playing altitude. The minute you get to 55, 60 minutes, your lungs start burning, your legs start trembling. You really struggle with your oxygen levels. It's a fact. It's why it's a very tough, thing to. They call it Fortress Loftus for a reason. And the other thing as well that I have to mention is the scrums. So the set piece overall malfunctioned, but it was very disappointing to see a Springbok scrum get pushed backwards like that, because the bind, when they bind the front row, the bind wasn't on the right angle. So not only did we go backwards, but we also lost that scrum. And when I see things like that with an experienced squad with Dawn Dunn, aka the bucket hat guy, it's disappointing. It's really disappointing. And a lot of the media were initially very happy, and we were laughing and we were joking, sort of 48 minutes into the game. And then the grumbling started after that. And it all really was on the momentum shift, because it wasn't in a good way. Look, Rassie misses nothing. The Springbok coaching IQ is the most beautiful thing on the planet. I'm sure rugby is dreamt about. It is written about. They breathe it. And definitely, I know the players are not going to be happy. The standards are extremely high in that squad. The margins are so small with Test rugby. You can pay attention to something and then ignore something else in your complete 82 minutes. And that sort of 10% of not paying attention can turn the game around completely, and you can lose momentum. And sometimes it's very hard to come back from that. I do think the Springboks did very well in controlling that last 2 minutes of the game and closing Italy out and making sure that they didn't score. I think if they allowed them to score in that last 2 minutes, I don't think that would have been a great thing. But they closed them out, and they did manage to control it. So I think for the guys that came on, there's going to be a lot more work ahead for them. I think they personally are going to be disappointed with themselves. Vincent Koch, we call him the Incredible, because if you go and look at him with the band on his head, he looks like the dad. Maybe you guys can insert a picture of him afterwards. But if you go and look at him,
no, he does look like Mr. Incredible, doesn't he? When
he looks like
they put
Mr.
the cartoons
Incredible
next to each other. But
yeah,
that leads in nicely to what I was wondering, Dawn, is like, scrums, line out, set pieces. This is where normally the Boks are like squeaky clean, uncharacteristic really for someone like Bongi to get intercepted in those situations. I think 5 lineouts overall in the game were poached. You spoke about the scrum, the bind, the angling not there, not being quite correct as it should have been. Why was there such disharmony in areas we're used to seeing the Springboks being so dominant? And I'll say again, this is not the Italians that ran the Irish so close in the Six Nations. This is more of a younger team, a mix of youth and blend. Why were they able to disrupt this very seasoned, this grizzled, this back-to-back World Cup winning starting pack, or more to your point, the bomb squad who came on.
I think what we must always keep in mind is if you look at the big five, and if you look at who was in a quarterfinal and a semi-final, there's been a massive shift over the last 10 years. Northern Hemisphere are bringing it. And we must always be mindful of the fact that we have lost to Italy once. I remember it well. Alistair Coetzee was coach. It was a dark day in Springbok
He didn't last long after that.
No. I was one of those gunning for his head. So let me tell you, what we must never do, ever, and I think South Africans forget this. If you look at the North and you look at the South, the South has dominated, Southern Hemisphere has dominated for so long that we kind of take it for granted that we're going to smash skit and donor. And when it's not happening, we're surprised by it. But what we must never forget is that if we're working hard, they are working 10 times harder. And you know what we had yesterday was a young, fresh, very, very, very fit Italian side. Those guys were extremely fit. And that's the beauty of youth. And they worked really, really hard. They scored from the 50-meter line a rolling maul try. I cannot remember the last time that happened. The amounts of physicality involved for them to get that far and push over a rampant Springbok pack is unheard of. Absolutely unheard of.
Dawn? You mind if I just come in there? I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you.
Unheard of.
I was surprised by their level of physicality, really. And this is why
it was beautiful.
I go back to my point I said a bit earlier, in that Rassie will take more out of these two games than I think he thought he would. Well, sorry. They know they are doing the analysis better than myself. But I just think that we possibly thought this game would be a bit easier than it is. I think it's turned out to be the perfect preparation game. The levels of physicality that Italy showed, especially in the second half, were absolutely what the Springboks need at the moment. And I would use the word carelessness, sloppiness, unusualness of play in the second half will be, it has to be corrected coming up. So how is it going to be corrected? I couldn't sleep this early hours of the morning. I couldn't sleep.
So really?
Let's gaze into the crystal ball. What do you think is going to happen?
Now that this is where I'm going. This is where I'm going. So I couldn't sleep. I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning. I just sat down. I couldn't sleep. I started watching the behind-the-scenes documentary of the British Lions tour in 2021 in South Africa.
Yes.
And I started watching the Fly on the Wall documentary on how, after losing the first test to the Lions, how Rassie and his team were brutal in the next week in preparing the Springboks. And when I say brutal, I was sitting there thinking, I think I would have just walked out. I can't deal with this. It's too aggressive. It's too detailed. It's too magnified. They're blaming everyone. The culture of honesty there. Wow. That's why they're world champions.
That's why they're world champions. And you know what? The pursuit of excellence, let's remember that. Our win in France last year was not accidental. It was predicted. We had the cities preparing a month before. They got the bigger part. They got the notification from Paris to get ready. So everything that Rassie does is planned. Sometimes things don't go according to plan because the players kind of let themselves down and they let the team down. But what we must keep in mind is Rassie is not interested in who thinks they are bigger than the Springbok brand and which player thinks that they are better and bigger than the South African fan. And this is what I love about him. He's as real and as authentic as it gets. And I'm telling you, this week is going to be brutal. They are going to be pushed harder than they've ever been.
Dawn, I want to say something. Zayn, sorry, just following on. In this documentary, Dawn is speaking about bringing the fire.
So you bring it, and you
Yes.
bring it constantly. Really, yeah, you fire all the time. But at the same time, you need to be mindful that you are a World Cup team and you are defending it. And 30%, 40%, 50% is not good enough, guys. It's not. And we're going to have a refining and definitely a polishing of the game. And we're going to see a better performance coming up. We're going to see a better performance, not only from Italy, but also from the Springboks, definitely.
Dawn, I just want to add to your point. And in this analysis, Zayn, I know you got the next question poised. I know you do, sir. But in this documentary I was watching where they're in the change room with the Boks and Rassie's talking. He's unhappy. And he said, listen, I don't want dogs that bark. Sorry.
Yes.
You won't be here. You won't be here.
Yes.
I want dogs that bite. He said, and this is the analogy he's using. He said, those dogs that sit on the porch and bark and bark. He said, they're of no use to me. I want dogs that bite. So this is authenticity that these guys are getting thrown at them. And I'm sure this week will be similar.
Now,
yes.
Listen, and for those of you who are listening out there, we want dogs that bite and bark for our podcast. We want you to bark at us and bite us. And we got a little bit of that after our first podcast last week. So we're going to go to the mailbag really quickly. And, one of the big talking points from the pod last week was Siya Kolisi. And, is this a season where we would see him phased out as captain, or there would be co-captains, or, what would happen? And, the takeaway from our pod last week was that he's of equivalent status to Lionel Messi or Richie McCaw. You can't drop these guys. There's a lot of consideration that goes in there. So to our audience who commented, I'm going to read some to you guys now. We had Mr. M 1884, and he said, Siya Kolisi will be at the World Cup. He will be the first captain to lift a third World Cup in a row. This is not a manifestation, but a fact. It's going to be achieved for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Now, I can see Dawn agree. Right, Dawn agrees. But Dawn, Cameron _JK said, buddy, dream on. The Springboks ain't winning 3 in a row. Go and fly a kite. I'll give you a few more comments. You know what we say, we round the braai, right? And we all talk in a safe space here. And we had Frederick who came in and said, Rassie doesn't get the credit for being an exceptionally shrewd coach, both in terms of tactics and the mental side of the game. His 2 shooter selections were appointing Siya Kolisi as captain and taking Freese to the last World Cup. However, when it really counts, in the last 2 World Cups, Siya was never on the field in the last 10 minutes, where I presume leadership is usually needed the most. It was always Dwayne or Peter Steph Toy. Why would that be? Kevin Clark, 5289, who was saying, I don't agree that Siya is irreplaceable. I'm adding that in parentheses. He's good, but can't class him as great. He definitely is replaceable. For those out there, please leave comments, leave reviews. You can find us at OTW_podcast on X and Instagram, or search for the On the Whistle podcast on Facebook or YouTube. You'll find our communities, and we want to hear from you. Dawn, I'll ask you really quickly. Maybe you give us a 1-minute answer here. Will Siya make it to 2027 as captain? What do you think?
I think they're going to work very hard to make it happen. I think it can happen, barring obviously any major injury. They're being very careful with him. He is carrying a slight injury. In the past, he would have played. But I just want to highlight something. It's more than Siya's work rate, which is outstanding. I mean, he's captain. He's phenomenal. He's loved. However, his work rate across the field, his poaching at the breakdown, his physicality that he brings to every game, that was missed yesterday. That was missed over and above his leadership. So with having even off and having Siya not play at all, I do think that there was that lack of senior leadership. I think Jesse, though, has been fantastic in consistently putting up his hand and leading. It's his first time leading, and he is going to get into his groove, and I do think his future is very bright. The bigger picture is to include Siya. And you know what? Whoever says to Rassie, you can't. Luister vir my. Jy moet luister nou. There's no such thing with Rassie. Don't ever say to him you can't, or you won't, or it's not possible. He is the guy who actually doesn't believe in that ceiling. And the fact that we had cities preparing a month before the World Cup ended should tell you the planning involved and the precision. I think he will be there. I think if he's rested properly, if the senior players are rested properly, their time on the field can be enhanced. I don't think he'll be there for more than 40 minutes, but definitely that is the long-term plan. And you know what it is? He's an icon. He's an icon. We are all comforted when we see him there. Even if he's carrying an injury, we're comforted. And the team overall, and it's a question that was addressed yesterday in the media briefing, the team overall are comforted by him because he's constantly in the referee's ear. He's talking to the referee, but in a very respectful way. And he's there and he steps up and he's not sort of passive with the leadership. I think Jesse is going to be outstanding. Jesse's got one of the hardest work rates overall. If you look at Springboks overall and you look at his work rate, he works 10 times harder than anybody else. He's there later than anybody else. So he does deserve to lead it. And I do think we're going to see him grow and we're going to see him shine. And I do wish him all the best. He's a fabulous, fabulous player. But Siya, I think what Rassie will do long term is we will have 4 captains. We'll have 4 rotating captains with the vice captain, and they're going to work on them being able to lead the team, because you could have an injury in the World Cup that ends your tournament. That stuff happens. You look at Jean de Villiers and you look at how his injury ended his World Cup performance early. So you do need to have your layers, and similarly with your 10s, similarly with your scrummies, similarly with your combinations. That's what Rassie is doing. He's playing around. Absolutely. He's playing around with the combinations so that if we have major injuries, you can slot in a player and have them play impeccably because they've played together, they're used to each other, they know what to do to get the best out of each other. And a lot of the passes yesterday, the guys didn't look, they just flipped. The no-look pass is getting more and more common in a Springbok attack, and I think that's really beautiful. So yes, I think he will be part of it. I don't think anybody must ever say impossible to Rassie, because that's when he's going to prove you wrong.
Absolutely. And listen, Dawn, thank you for that analysis. We've got 2 more talkers to get into the pod, and quite frankly, they could be dedicated podcasts on their own, but we're going to flip through them. And one is another story that's been bubbling in the background in the build-up to the test at the weekend. And there's Warren Gatland, the former Wales, the former British and Irish Lions coach. He writes a column for the Telegraph here in the United Kingdom. And he said that the Springboks were guilty of spying on the Lions in 2021. If you missed the story, Gatland claimed that the Boks had rented a house that overlooked the Lions training ground and mounted a long lens camera in order to spy on the tourists. He and his coaching team suspected that they were being spied on and believed their fears to be confirmed when Lucanio Am made a huge hit on Elliot Daly during the first test. That hit was so hard, I'm still feeling it now. He claimed that Erasmus was also pictured on the pitch with a piece of paper that had the Lions plays on it. Rassie did address this in the build-up to the game. He also, if I'm correct, spoke about it in the press conference, and I quote here, saying it was a nasty claim to make in a newspaper on hearsay. It just creates awkwardness. I would like it to stop now and for us not to talk about it anymore. Clearly, Dawn, the story is not going to go away. I mean, what do you think of the claims? How's this gone down in South Africa?
Do you want the honest answer? Or do you want the polite answer?
We are unfiltered round the bride.
Yeah, unfiltered.
You answer whatever you like.
I also want to give my view on that, but we go with yours, Dawn.
Let Dawn go first.
You know what? The Northern Hemisphere are the biggest losers on the planet. And honestly, I've got zero tolerance for it. You couldn't meet a worse group in your life. Let me tell you, they're dreadful losers. Absolutely dreadful. Up until last year, they were still calling Ireland the number one team in the world, even though the Springboks had won the World Cup. They are such poor losers and they hate to lose. And, you know, Gatland is very conveniently forgetting that we smashed them in 2009 for the British and Irish Lions then. And we smashed them again in 2021. And they can't deal with it. They can't deal with the loss. And it's like, you know, it's like Ireland moaning about a few things. And it's like the All Blacks moaning about the fact that they had running tummies in the 95 World Cup. That also came up recently. You know, they can tell stories all they like, and they can tell fairy tales all they like. The facts are we scoop them, we donor them, and they can't get over it. And shame. It's too bad, too sad.
Zayn, I actually love this because this is not a rugby question, because this has also come up in football as well. But let me just, I'd like to just put it down on the table, and I hope if nobody ever listens to the podcast, they only hear this.
Yeah.
Rugby coaches, football, they're not surgeons. They're not rocket science.
No.
They're going out to play rugby. The game is very simple. In watching the games, he did nothing new, Warren Gatland.
Yep.
They kicked the ball, they tackled, and they scored tries, and they kicked for posts. Okay? So he shouldn't be expecting people not to be watching their training session. They're not that intelligent, Zayn. They are not touring a massive pandemic. It's just a sport. I don't care if someone watches it. I don't care. You know, so it's like these boxers that, you can't watch the boxing training before you're just gonna get in and fight. What, you're gonna bring a wheelchair now and hit someone? That's not your secret. Come on, man. You know,
Let's keep in mind.
Or you're gonna go into the stand. You're gonna play with 18 players now. Oh, that's how a secret. No, you're playing a sport. So don't overcomplicate it as if you're this genius that nobody can watch your preparations. It's just sport.
Sure. Well, let me come in here and present maybe a different perspective around this braai. I'm an old man, so I'm sure you see the gray in the beard, not like you youngsters, right?
Older than you.
Rubbish! I'm older than you.
In Durban, we age a lot worse, you know. We got potholes, water problems, but the beach keeps us chilled. But let me take you back to 2003, and Rudolf Strauly is the coach of the Springboks. There's a guy called Mark Keohane who runs his own website, keo.co.za, was the media manager, a well-respected journalist, or a well-established journalist. And Mark wrote a book about what transpired in that Springbok team under Rudolf Strauly. There was the race route, Geo Cronje and Quinton Davids. Stalingrad, which obviously got a lot of headlines with Springbok players.
Yeah.
Were photographed naked in pits.
It was horrible.
In 2003. And one of the things I remember from his book, and I looked it up this morning, was that in 2003 he wrote that there were allegations of spying against the Springboks ahead of their game against the Wallabies at Newlands. And what he writes in his book, and this is his account, and we haven't got Rudolph's side or other people who would have been involved with the management, so for balance, let's build this up. But he said that there was a video analyst who was in a private suite in Newlands and in the captain's run, filmed part of the Wallabies' final run, but stopped because the person was worried they were seen. And there wasn't they did the Springboks, Rudolph, he said, admitted to him that the Springboks had secretly filmed Argentina ahead of playing against them. Now, I'm also going to say I've spoken to enough Sharks coaches who've said that when they've gone to New Zealand in the old days, can't believe these are the old days, on Super Rugby tours, where they were suspicious that they were being filmed, and they would sometimes hold training sessions in parks away from the official venues. And if I can insert myself in a story, which you never want to do as a host or a journalist, but ahead of one of the All Blacks tests in South Africa, in the noughties, I was driving to the old DHS All Boys training ground in Gainsborough Drive in Durban North, which is now it's been flattened. And if you ever drive past it, it's a beautiful block of homes. And I remember driving up to the press conference we were going to have there with the All Blacks, or a quick media scrum, and I remember seeing somebody associated with the Springboks standing in a bush overlooking where the All Blacks were practicing. Now, that person could have been in there taking a leak. They could have been taking a call. They could have been doing something I'm not aware of. But it was, to me, at the time, because me and the person locked eyes, we saw each other, and then I continued to drive on.
Who was it, Zay? Who was it?
And the person at the time, I can confirm, would have been an integral part of the Springbok setup.
Okay, so I ask you a question now. I ask you a question. Did the Boks beat the All Blacks?
I think if I want to be vague in this, right? Because I don't want to reveal who the person was. So I'm not going to reveal whether the team won or lost. But what I will say is there was a period of time in the noughties where, regardless of where the All Blacks were playing, whether it was in Durban or outside of Durban, they would base themselves in Durban. They loved it on the coast. They loved the Beverly Hills. They loved the DHS All Boy training facility. This was the home for the All Blacks in South Africa.
Zayn, personally, listen, I think we give too much credit to this. I think we give it too much credit. Listen, as I said to you, the 15 of you must imagine the All Blacks will play, and I'm just using them as a country. They will play maybe 10 tests this rugby season or a bit more. Okay, the number's not accurate. There's enough analysis in those games for us not to go and spy on them. There's enough.
Correct.
And what we need to do, we're going to the Super Rugby, we're going to last year's planning. So I just think Warren Gatland was probably sitting at home, wherever he is, and thought, what can I say in order to disrupt the pattern of preparation, like Rassie did to them during the Lions tour when he put out that hour video, right?
Yeah.
Basically put out at the right time after the first test. Gatland is here exactly the same thing. What can I? But he's not authentic. He had to watch someone else do it so he can do it. So listen, let's just move on.
We can move on. And I just want to say one more thing super quick, Dawn, and this is 30 seconds. If you watch Chasing the Sun, the original one, Rassie does talk about being suspicious of where they were based, and they were training in Tokyo ahead of the Japan game because he was worried about long lenses filming them. So this is not a news story necessarily in rugby. And I'm not saying Gatland is correct in what he said. I'm just saying rugby's always had this element of, are people watching us? Sorry, Dawn, come in.
Can we just all remember, and let's not talk this to death because I'm going to fall to sleep here. Warren Gatland was just fired for overseeing one of the worst Welsh runs in Welsh history. Hashtag subject closed.
Well, listen, let's draw a line under this because I'm sure we could get in all sorts of spying allegations here. And Courtney being a former footballer, I'm sure when he was at Manning Rangers might have a few stories there, but we'll save it for another episode. But another well-respected coach, depending who you speak to, Dawn, is Jake White. He and the Bulls have had a departure following a season review. During his 5-year stint in Pretoria at the Bulls, they lost 3 URC finals in 4 years, including a recent loss to Leinster last month, where White, in his post-match press conference, criticized his players. The senior leaders, according with the support staff, seemed to take offense and revolted against the former World Cup winner, according to multiple media reports. Jake's departure follows a similar pattern of other coaching stints, such as the Brumbies, the Sharks, and Montpellier, where he turned things out at the start of his tenure, but left without staying the full term of his contract, as things always seem to go south. Dawn, I got to start with you. Was it right for him to go? And do you think he could land another big job in rugby?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Never forget, saying that he won a Rugby World Cup.
Good man.
He come with coaching IQ. Let's never forget that, guys. He won a Rugby World Cup. And that can never be taken away from him. He comes with incredible rugby IQ. However, and I love Jake White. He does tend to lose the change room, and the quickest way to lose the change room is when you pick on the players. And the minute he said, and I did think that there was going to be definitely a sling back on what he said, because he said, oh, we don't have the budgets to get the big players. Now, as a South African coach, you can never say that, because that's not true. I'm sorry, that's not true. If there's one thing that we have in South Africa, is we have a bottomless pool of really talented players. At any given time, if you look internationally, and if you look in the Northern Hemisphere, and you look in the Southern Hemisphere, we have got, at any given time, a minimum of over 1,000 qualified players that are playing either for other countries or playing for other clubs. And the reason why they're doing that is because there's such a surplus of quality here in South Africa. So I don't agree with what Jake White said. And when he said that, he totally pissed off people. So he pissed off the senior management, the board, and he pissed off the players. And what you had was a coup d'etat.
You mind if I just come in? I have a similar affection for Jake White. I do. I think he's a trailblazer as well. There's not many coaches in our country that have coached outside the country like Jake White. So he's got a profile unlike other managers. Let's not forget this guy won a World Cup playing with a 19-year-old that could donkey kick from his own post to the other side. Was saying. So he had the courage to put this guy in and then resurrected the franchise of the Bulls to a point where Dawn gave us the profile. Okay, he said something wrong. They've moved him on. Fantastic. That's their business. But this is a good manager. This is a good coach.
Absolutely.
So
and he's going to land back
if he's going to fall out, if he's going to fall out with the leadership, okay, fine. How many top class people don't fall out with the leadership? How many top class managers don't fall out and have we're not talking about.
I'll give you an example. Rassie Erasums doesn't.
Well, I'll give you a long one. Jose Mourinho, serial winner. Belichick, serial winner. Sir Alex Ferguson, serial winners. These are serial winners, Zayn. Conte, serial winners. Now, we're not talking about sports. We're just talking about leadership and leaders. People fall out. Let's move on. You'll go somewhere else.
But to also come in here, and I'm I guess not as big a backer of Jake White as you guys are, in the sense that I respect what he did with the Springboks. Because, look, let me start with what I respect. When he took over the Springboks, it was a mess, right? He came in after the embarrassment of Stahldraht. He came in after the failures on the field. And in the first test he coached, he took that Bok team to New Zealand, and they nearly won. They took that game to the 70th minute when a lot of us thought they wouldn't. And then he started to change the mindset that the Springboks could start to beat the All Blacks again after a period where they were dominating, right? They were dominating World Rugby. He brought that rivalry back. He won an All Tri-Nations. And obviously, he masterminded a World Cup success. However, the World Cup in 2007, I think, always has to be balanced, because a quarterfinal win against Fiji, a semi-final against essentially still at that point an amateur Argentina, and then a rematch with England in the final meant that if I look at all the Springbok successes, he probably, and this is through no fault of his own, had the easiest path to a World Cup success that any Springbok team has had. So that 2007 team, there's some greats. Brian Habana will make any great Springbok team. Victor Matfield's outstanding. But and I know, Dawn, you'll come in off the back of this, but that run to win that World Cup was pretty easy. And I will say this because at this point I was still intimately involved as a rugby writer in South Africa in '07. And I was told before the World Cup, so 6 months before his contract was going to expire, that Jake was not going to have his contract renewed. What I'm saying is pretty much an open secret because Jake's weakness is that Jake burns his bridges wherever he goes. And even when he won a World Cup, he was going to go. There was no way he was going to maintain him
100%.
because the senior management didn't want him and the players didn't want him. And Jake thought that it was going to be easy. He was going to leave and get a New Zealand job, get an England job, get a France job, get a top 3 job in world rugby. But you know what? When you're difficult to work with, it doesn't matter your success. People won't want to get you there because they realize you're going to burn out the players and fall out. Dawn, you're bibbing to come in. Disagree, agree with me. I don't mind.
Okay. I want to talk about the point that you just made on the easiest road to the World Cup. And I'm going to remind you of last year, and I'm going to remind you of England's easy road to the World Cup. Did they win the World Cup?
No, they didn't. But to say
Why?
that,
They had a very easy road.
But if you look at it, but if you look at
no,
it,
Zayn, answer the question. No, Zayn, answer the question. England last year had one of the easiest roads on the planet to the World Cup. We had the pool of death.
Yeah, we had an incredibly hard run, right? In 2020.
England had such an easy road to the World Cup, but did they win?
No.
So at the end of the day, that BMT, that big match mentality with a squad is either there or it isn't. And this current Blue Bull squad, let's leave the Sharks aside because the Sharks, I love them to bits, but they're notorious chokers. The Brumbies were very, very good when Jake was there. And yes, there was a coup d'etat. But if you look at now, and you look at this current Blue Bull squad, and you look at where they were before Jake got there, it is chalk and cheese.
To clarify, I think, again, Jake is an excellent coach. His track record shows that. He burns his bridges, there's no doubt. And factually, Dawn, you can look me up here. Look at the ratings of the team the Springboks beat in '07, and they're not better than the teams when it comes to ratings that 2019, 2023, and 1995 had. They were harder. That's what I mean. Like, factually, they had the easiest run to win a World Cup of South African teams. I'm happy they
but
won.
that point doesn't
I'm very happy
matter,
they won. But no, but it does. It speaks to the weakness of global rugby. So if you're gonna say that, if we're gonna say the World Cup, there is the caveat that it was with an easy run.
No,
it was.
England couldn't win the World Cup. They also had an easy run. No, come on, Zayn.
Claim and an effort to Argentina. Dawn, with the greatest of respect, you can't defend that. Those are weak
Please
teams.
don't look at England's pool and look at their run to the World Cup. Come on now.
Are you saying the Springboks of 2023 against France, against England, and the All Blacks in the final had an easier run than '07?
No, I'm saying
you're rugby, Dawn. You can't argue that.
Don't put words in my mouth. I'm going to donor you. I'm coming to Durban next week. Don't put words in my mouth.
That would be a great part. I'm going to donor you.
I'm going to donor you.
No, donor. I like donor rather than donor.
Yeah, blossom. You don't put words in my mouth. What I said was, if having an easy run to the World Cup meant that you're going to win the World Cup,
I get the point.
Then England should have won the World Cup.
England should have won it. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that means nothing. Having an easy run to the World Cup means
still got to win.
Nothing.
Still got to win.
No, there's no dispute in that. I'm saying when you rank it, it's simple as that. They had an easier run comparatively with other Springbok teams.
You're chasing your tail, honey. You're chasing your tail.
I'm not chasing my tail. Go look at the rankings if you disagree. Listen, but this is what we love, right? The braai. And I think everyone here is going to say, with some sort of certainty, Jake will get another job, Jake will win something, and Jake will fall out. I think
Yep.
that's going to be the story of it. Dawn, you have been an absolutely fantastic guest.
Dawn, you've been
Thank
fantastic
you for
to
your
have.
analysis. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for helping to paint
It's
a
a
picture of the Springboks for
pleasure.
us that we don't normally get. You've been an
It's a
absolutely
pleasure.
amazing guest. And we
But
look forward to following you.
before
Sure.
I go, I have to mention Springbok women played Canada yesterday. It was an opener, and I would like to throw everybody's attention to the Women's World Cup that is kicking off in August.
Where is it?
And it's happening in your back town in the UK, Courtney.
Thank you.
So please take Roo. Please go watch the games. Please support the ladies. It kicks off in August. I'll send you all the fixtures. And the part of what they're doing now is they're playing warm-up games. I thought they were brilliant, and I really would love it, men, if you guys can just send out some love towards the ladies as they prepare to take on the Big Five in England. And you know, England are number one in the world on the women's side, as well as Canada is number two, and the Black Ferns are number three. So I think there's some spice ahead, and I think it's going to be a World Cup of upsets. So thank you so much. Really appreciated it.
And we will be supporting the Springboks. We know in the women's game, they certainly are the underdogs in some of these matches. So we will want to see them succeeding. Dawn, thank you for the shout out for the women's game. We'd love to have you back round our braai. And we, of course, will follow you very closely. Mama Raga, there for all the Bok games. We hope the second test sees a better overall performance. And yeah, we'd love to have you on down the line. So we wish you well. And for those of you listening out there, let us know if you agree with Dawn. Let us know if you disagree with Courtney. Let us know what you think about what I said. We'd love to hear what you think. OTW_podcast. We wish you well for now, but stay with us in the chats. The discussion continues online. Ciao for now.